Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see and explore Supervisor, right? So Supervisor is a very nice process control and management system that is very useful when you want to run your programs on a server or on your system. So let's see how to install it and how to use it. So before we start, Supervisor consists of three main things, right, that you should know. It consists of Supervisor D, right, which is the main actual program that is going to run the programs, and we have Supervisor Controller, which is a CLI interface towards this, and then you also have the configuration file, which is very important, that contains the instructions of what to do. So let me show you what I mean. So this is a simple high level overview of Supervisor. So we have Supervisor D, which starts up the programs and the processes. It stops and manages everything, right? So this is the main system. So it's like a client-server architecture or client-server system, and then Supervisor D is like the server that is going to do or serve every program that you want it to do, right? Very nice. Now the only way you can interact with the Supervisor D is through two options. So there is the Supervisor CTL, right, which is a CLI that gives you the option of connecting and communicating with Supervisor D, and it does that through using socket. So it uses the Unix Socket or an HTTP socket, right? And there's also another option, which is RPC, but most of the time this is what you'll be using. So that is what you'll be using, right? So the Supervisor CTL or Supervisor Control is a CLI that allows you to be able to communicate with Supervisor D, and it does that through the Unix socket or the HTTP socket. So that is why you will need this particular file, right? So this command inside your configuration file will specify that, okay, I want to communicate with Supervisor D via this particular socket, and then all of these instructions and then whatever I want to do is done inside the supervisor.conf file, which mostly can be found inside your etc supervisor, right, or /config d based on how you installed it. Okay, there's also another way you can interact with Supervisor D, which is using the local UI, right, which is a localhost UI, and which requires the HTTP server protocol, right, the HTTP or TCP protocol that TCP can understand. So let's explore the program that you'll be running. So how do you write your programs on Supervisor config D? So the simplest way is this. The most important thing is if whatever Supervisor configuration file that you have, if you want to be able to use Supervisor CTL, you have to specify that, okay, I want to have this, right, and then this one, this Supervisor CLI will be communicating on this server URL, which is this Unix socket, which is this one here. So once you specify this, it's automatically going to be generated, and it's going to be using this particular socket or this particular point or link to communicate. And then this is how you specify your program. So the first one is you must give a command, and the command, the best way or recommended way is to go to the direct path to where your program is, and then you can also specify the process name. So this program name is going to pick this particular name here, and then you can also specify the directory in which you are running your program and some log files, which is very important, right? At least you should always keep logs of whatever is happening, because Supervisor keeps its own logs, but you also have to keep logs for the system, for the application. So this one is like the application logs, and then the Supervisor also has its own logs. And you can also specify that, okay, I want to, once I start this system, I want to auto start or auto restart. You can also specify the number of seconds you want to wait to start this program. There are also some other configurations you can also make. So this is a simple overview of Supervisor. So we have Supervisor D, which is the actual program that is going to start, stop, manage your programs. Then we have the Supervisor configuration file, which contains all the instructions of what you want to do. We have Supervisor CTL, which is a CLI that communicates via the Unix socket or the HTTP socket, and you also have a local UI in which you can also see the same thing, so in case you don't want to use the CLI. So let's start with it. So I'll just go back to my workspace. In case you don't have Supervisor, there are several ways you can install it. You can install it with pip or with apt-right get. So let me show you how to do that. I don't have internet, but you can just install it with this pip. Let me make it bigger. So pip install Supervisor. So that is how to install it on your system, right? using Python. You can also install it with this, so it can also be sudo apt get install supervisor. So that's another way you can also install it on your system. Perfect. Now let's see how to run it. So as I said, it provides a configuration file here in which you can also work with it. So if I go back to my workspace, to the same place, and then I just go to etc supervisor, so we have this particular file there. We have the configuration directory. As you can see, this is D in front, so that means it's a directory, and this is a file, that's why it's dash. So this is the main configuration file, right? You can delete this one and use this one, but keeping it this way is easier. So this is the main configuration file that contains everything that you need. Then within this place you can put several configuration files, right? So let's check what is on this one. So I'll just go back here and I'll cut this supervisor.conf. If I cut it out, you can see it well. So let me copy this from here and put inside here so that I can see. And let's paste it here. We'll be using auto detect. Yeah, just automatically detected. And now we can run. So let's explore what it means. So this is the configuration for one of the most important things that you need. It has the Unix socket, which I said, right? So it's going to be used as the socket in which we can communicate with supervisor D, right? So this is very important. So once you specify the file, automatically once you start supervisor D, this is going to be created in this location. And then supervisor D here is specifying that, okay, I want to actually start the daemon. This is very important. This is the main log, the main program, and you can specify the log file, right, for supervisor itself, and then the PID file, right? So this is for supervisor. And if I come down here, I said you also have RPC protocol. So there is TCP, Unix, and then RPC. So this is for the RPC, and the actual CLI is this. So you have to also specify this in your configuration file to be able to use supervisor CTL. And we are specifying that, okay, I want the CLI to communicate via this particular Unix, which is what we specified here, to supervisor D, and that is what is specified here. Then in case you also want to communicate with the local WebUI, you have to specify that, okay, my normal internet, spin up an HTTP server and listen on this particular port. So this is another way you can also communicate with supervisor D, and it's going to listen on this. Then this include is going to point us to where all our configuration file, which in our case, and this is where we are going to have our configuration file. So if I go back here, so we can also create one. Let's create a configuration file, and then we will put it there, right? So I'm just going to create a configuration file. Let's go to Streamlit supervisor.conf, right? So I already have my Streamlit app here, which is this one, very simple basic app. And in case I want to run it, this is how mostly I would have run it. I'll go back to my desktop. As you can see, inside my supervisor stuff, cd into super stuff, we have my Streamlit app. The normal way I would have run this is that if I'm inside a virtual environment, which is here, so if I go into my VNV, my bin, I have a lot of programs there because it is a virtual environment. That is the recommended way to run a program like inside a virtual environment. And this is a program, right? This is a script that we use to run Streamlit. So if I go out from here into my desktop supervisor, in case I want to run it, I would have run it Streamlit run, right? So app.py. If I run this one here, as you can see, it's going to spin up my application here, which is this one, listen on the particular port. And the reason it's able to do is that this is the program, this Streamlit program is what is being used to run it, and which is the same thing here. And inside, it is inside my VM. So in our case, we would also want to do the same thing, right? So we want to run the program itself that will spin up our Streamlit app. So let's start it. Perfect. So now let's run it. So I'll activate my virtual environment. So source env bin activate, and as I said, everything is inside my VNV bin If I go here, I have my Streamlit program there, and I can actually run my program, right? So Streamlit run, right? So I want to use the direct path to this particular Streamlit. That is the recommended way. So let's create our configuration file that we want to run on, which is this one here. And based on our instructions, we need to specify the program that we want to listen on, the command, which is the Streamlit command that we want to run, and a directory. So let's copy this to save us time. I've already explained it, so you just get the point. Copy this one, and then I'll paste it here, and you modify it. So this, I'll call it as my ST app, Streamlit app, and then this is going to be to the direct path where my application is, which is the one I've been seeing all along here. So where this is inside vn bin. If I go into vnv bin pwd, I have it here. So I'll copy this all the way because Streamlit is found inside that directory, and then I'll paste it here, right? So this is where it is, /Streamlit. And the command I ran to run Streamlit here was run up, right? So I'm going to go back, and then I'll put that command here. And what I want to do is that it was listening on a port. By default, if there is already one listening on, it will pick the next one. So what I want to do is I want to give it a specific port. So I'll just go with my --server dot port, and let's give it a port of 8585, right? Which nobody is using. We can give it a different port. So that is the basic command I'll be running. Then I also have to specify the directory from which I'm running, which I can find this particular file, and that is the same directory where we have it here, which in our case is here, right? So our directory is found the same place, as you can see. That is where our app is. Our app is found here. If I go back and I get out of here, see that we have my app here. That is what we are calling. Perfect. Then the next thing we need is the standard out. You always have to keep logs, so I have to create a path to my log file, a path to my standard error file. So I'll go back to this place. I've already created a folder called logs, right? And that is where it's going to be. So this logs file can be anywhere, but in my case it is inside my logs. So pwd, and I'm going to pick this particular path, copy, come back here, and then I'm going to put it here. So let's put it here. So this is going to be my standard error, standard out, and then this is going to be my standard error. So one of the ways you can do this is that instead of writing it like this, you can also put the program name to the standard out, so that we know that, okay, this is for standard out, and then do the same thing for this. This is for standard error, right? So this way the name stapp will be appended to this particular file. The next thing is I can also specify auto restart, so that when you auto restart, I think it's true, and then we have auto start. Let's go to true, right? That is a basic understanding. And you can also specify your redirect. So this redirect stdr can be used also, but most of the time if you're using this one, you have to set this one. If you by default it is false when you call this, right? So in case you don't want to use a standard error file, but you want to redirect this one to your supervisor configuration logs, then you use this one here, and you set it to true. But in our case, we are not using it, so let it be false. You can also add some environment to it, but let's go with this. Perfect. So we have our Streamlit configuration file. How do we add it to Supervisor for you to work with it? So I'm going to pick this entire stuff that we had here, and I'll go to my location, which is where I have my configuration file. And because this is here to include it, it will automatically include it there. So I'll just go to my confd. I have one there already, but let me create another one, which I'll call it as my let's call it touch let's give that Streamlit Supervisor.conf. Right, permission denied because I am not a sudo user. Perfect, I'm done, and now it has been created. If I check the right, it's the same right like the previous one, and then I can now open this sudo nano my Streamlit configuration file, and let's paste in what we want to paste in. Is we'll be pasting in the, not this part, but our file here, our program. Paste it here. So this is the name of the program, and this is where it is running from, and the port, right? So I'll save it. Hopefully there's no errors with it. So let's save, yes, and then we save it. Now if I cut this, you can see that it's there perfectly well. That is it, we are done with it. Now how do we, let's stop this. Now how do we start our application? How do we allow supervisor, right, to know that we have added some program to it? So the first thing is that this thing doesn't know that there have been changes, so Supervisorctl must tell this that, okay, I've made some changes to this, update yourself, right? So in that case, you just go back to here and just go with my sudo supervisor CTL, right? And then you just go with reread. So this is going to reread it, and it's going to find out, okay, there is a new program called available on it. Perfect. And then updates. It's going to update. Okay, it has updated, it has added this process, whatever program, to the process group, right? Because as I said, supervisor D is going to do all the activities. Now to be able to check the status, now let's go with status all. You can see that now it automatically started and it's running. So the reason is, once I updated it, when you reread, it reload the entire stuff and update. If you update, it reload and restart everything, right? So that is the difference. That's why it automatically started. So, and it's up. You can also see it here, right? So if I go back to my location, wherever the application was, so let's open my configuration and then go with localhost 8585. You can see that Streamlit is already running, right? Perfect. So that is a very, very useful way of using Supervisor. You can use it to start your programs all the time. Perfect. In case you want to stop it, right? In case I want to stop Supervisor, as we saw here, we can stop it, right? We can just do the same thing. So this is the status. In case I want to stop it, I can just go with sudo supervisor CTL, right? And I'll just say, okay, stop my ST app. Right, so I'm using the same name. This name here is the same name that was used in our configuration, which is the program name, right? So we are saying, okay, stop it. And once you stop it, it has stopped. If I check the status of it, you can see that that one has been stopped and our app is no more going to work, right? So you see that the app is no more working. Perfect. So that is how to stop it. You can also start or restart, or first start my ST app, and it's going to start it. If I check the status, it is running, and if I refresh, so it's just working perfectly well, right? Very cool. You can start, you can check the status, you can stop, you can also restart, you can do a lot of things. So you can just check all the configurations there, supervisor CTL --help, and these are all the stuff you can do. There is the -c, in which in case you have multiple files, you can specify, okay, I want to use this particular file to run or to start my supervisor, right? But by default, it will pick from etc here, okay, in case you don't specify it. Perfect. Now let's see how to also work on it. So there's also an interactive option. Once you put a command here, right, another character, it moves straight away to the CLI option. But you can also go to the interactive by just going with this option here without any argument. This is now inside this interactive mode, and I can check the status again. I can check the status of, let's say, only just ML project, only that one is working. I can stop ML project. It has stopped. I can check the status. Right, perfect. So you can actually do a lot of things in the interactive mode. But if in case you want to quit, just go exit. And in case you don't want to use the interactive mode, you just add your command here. So status. Oh, perfect. That is cool. You have seen how supervisor works. You have seen how it communicates with my supervisor D via the Unix socket. And then let's see how to also communicate via the WebUI. So to work with the WebUI, the most important thing, you need to specify this particular directive here and the port you want to listen on, which we have already done in our configuration, which was this one here. By default, it will not come with it, so you have to add this one to be able to see the WebUI. So I'll just go back to my supervisor. Right, it's already running, so I can just go back to my localhost, which is my localhost. Localhost is the most common DNS, and then my 9000, right? 9001, and you can see that we have the same stuff we had here. It's the same thing we are also seeing here. So you just stop, and it's running. Stop and running. I can start it by clicking on start, and now it said now it has started. And if I go back to the CLI option and I check, that started, right? So these are the two different interfaces, using the CLI or using the web local UI, right? You can also check the logs. Going to redirect it to the logs. You can also stop, clear, restart or refresh, and do all of these things, and it's listening on this particular port. So that is how wonderful Supervisor is. Now, how do you know where you can find the Supervisor file? So for example, this is here. I'm outside of my etc. In case I want to know where my Supervisor configuration file is, how do you do that? The simplest way is just go with this. So sudo systemctl, right? Because supervisor can also be spent by systemctl. Then just go with my status, then supervisor, right? D. There's no service called supervisor D, so let's go with without this, and now it's working, right? So you can see that it's active and it's running. It started like this time ago, like some minutes ago, and you can see the result. So with this option here, you can know where your programs, all the programs that are running. So all of these things are being started. We have the Streamlit one running, and we also have all of these projects running, right? As I said, you can also know where your configuration file, very important, the urgent version there. Richtig. So very important. So this is important. So in case you want to know where it is, if you do the systemctl, you can see that it's showing it here, right? So Python 3, and this is what is the type of supervisor ID and where it has been installed, and this is the particular configuration file that you are using currently. You can also specify to use a different one using this option, yes, -C. So that is the basic overview of working with supervisor. So let's quit. That's it, right? So that is how to do that. You can also restart it, and sometimes if you have any error, the best thing is you just check your logs, one, and then you also stop supervisor. If I stop it, supervisor is stopped. If I check the status, it is no more running, and since it's no more running, if I run this, even these ones are also not running, right? So sometimes in case supervisor is not working, you have to check and see if systemctl have started supervisor and then supervisor have started the other program. So systemctl is going to start this, and then this is also going to start all the other programs, right? That is the basic understanding. So in case it's not working, just check and make sure that systemctl has started supervisor. So let's restart it again. So let's quit, and then let's start. Perfect. If I check it, it is running, it's active and it's running, and then our application will start running soon. That automatically started. So thank you for watching. See you another time. Stay blessed. In case you have any error or questions, let me know in the comment section below. See you another time. Bye. And before we go, let's check the logs for our program. We already had some logs that have been generated, so there's no errors here, and all the stuff that were started are all here, right? So the logs are also being kept, and these logs which were found here are different from the one from supervisor, right? As you can see, this is stout, that is the name, and you can see that we have the same name here, right? So see you another time. Bye.